Click the links to join the channel, become a member, or go to Odysee, Bit Chute. There's much more content, not only from this channel, but from all the other channels that are on YouTube are also on Odysee as well, because the censorship on YouTube is insane. Think back 5 years ago, what the YouTube environment was like. Now think 5 years in the future, it's not going to be recognizable. It's not going to go the way of MySpace. It's not too big to fail, but it's like before it starts failing too hard, they're going to save it. It's just going to be more cat videos and makeup tutorials and that kind of stuff. Like, hey, we're going to do coffee reviews and unboxings, and it's like, it's just going to be like pretty 20-year-old girls doing things on camera, which is, it's a percentage of it now, but most people right now want something a bit edgier. That's where Odysee and Bit Chute comes in. Anyway, so Alec Baldwin is back in the news with civil litigation for negligence or maybe recklessness, whatever, and plus his production company itself, and then possible criminal charges, and like the defense could be, and this is going to sound weird, not only that Your Honor, my client's really dumb. It's like, well, I've heard that before. No, though, this is different because he's a dumb guy, but he's a dumb guy in a dumb industry. By that I mean, if you're in any kind of industry, heavy machinery, engineering, anything, you're very up on the safety industry of what you're doing. If you're extracting silver ore and you're mining, or you're whatever you're doing, the dangers in the chemicals, the solvents you're using, the heavy equipment you're using, the fumes that are what's caustic, what's not. You are very in tune with that. Your standards of safety, what you're dealing with. Hollywood is different because there's less regulation, which is fine. Less regulation, the better. But then occasionally you get people getting hurt, which honestly is a price you pay for a little bit more freedom. To me, it's totally worth it. But you also got people in the industry who are not into gun culture. They're not so much into it. And you get a situation where, like, you're able to hire some girl who's like in her 20s. She's some blue-haired weirdo who probably got the job by passing out BJs to people, probably to Alec Baldwin. It's a weird industry when this customs and standards of the industry itself has a negligent standard. It's like, product liability, manufacturing defect versus product is inherently, I don't remember. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to show you the three different types of Liberty devices that I'm familiar with, and maybe there's a fourth, but I don't know it, because it deals with this concept of you get handed something. What is a reasonable person? That's negligence, the reasonable man test in similar circumstances. You get handed something on a set, you immediately check it for its. You want to know what's going on with it, and the very least you can do is, well, the bullets go in the cylinder, so you check the cylinder first. Now, I don't think this is in English. I'm familiar with the Webley. That's a top breaking method. So I guess different manufacturers have used this top breaking method, which doesn't look very good to me. Because in some of them, when you break open the top, the hammer pulls back, which is a weird feeling to watch a hammer on a gun being pulled back as you eject the cylinder. Anyway, this is a top break method. You can open it up, you can look at the cylinder, and you can see what's going on with it. This is what most people are much more familiar with, and this is like, it's funny. Like you think of cars, how cars have kind of like how they've improved, and have they reached peak cardom? Well, it's like they're still going to have four wheels. With a revolver, it's like you've kind of reached peak. Like it can't get any simpler and more useful and more durable than this. This is a model, a design that if you take care of it, could literally last over 100 years. This is a side brake method. This is good because it gives you a nice strong frame, and you eject the cylinder and the hammer doesn't move, the trigger doesn't move, nothing moves. You just eject the cylinder and you look in those holes and you're like, oh, okay, I see there's 6 holes and they're all empty. This is what most Americans are familiar with, this side brake method. I don't know what this is. It's quick and easy to check. You just pop it out, and if there's something in there, you just pull that little ejection rod or press the ejection rod, and the shells will pop out, and you can see what you have to work with. Now, this is where we run into trouble. This is something you do not want Hollywood actors to play with. This is I was calling it a loading window. I think they call it a loading gate. Okay, so here's the thing. Hollywood has this technique where you hand someone a piece, and you tell them if it's hot or cold. That is absolutely insane. So the situation is where the customs and usages of the industry itself is negligent. You would think the union would be on top of that as a safety issue. And the thing I was saying is, the rule should be the person should check it when they take possession. But this model is a little bit more complicated to check. But again, we're not talking rocket science. It's just there are better models that were developed a little bit later. But the thing is, the reason the unions are probably not into these rules is because Hollywood is not a gun culture as much as the rest of many other industries. It's just Hollywood. It's like you're probably going to find many fewer people who are into this kind of thing. Like they might have they might have a Beretta on the nightstand, but they know how to use it. And a cowboy gun is something that's just a foreign language to them. So now with revolvers, there are the three types that I showed you in this side loading port thing, which makes things a little bit difficult to check. But what's the first rule when you're handed any Liberty device? Muzzle safe. That's really the most important rule. You imagine there's a laser coming out of the muzzle, and any path that laser crosses is a potential path for the bullet to come out at like 1,000 feet per second. So if you keep that in mind, muzzle safe always. No, doesn't matter what you're doing, when you're handing it to someone, when you're practicing with it. Now, on set, things are a little bit different. But even on set, you don't, it's called, I don't know if it's called crossing the muzzle. You don't want to inadvertently swing the muzzle in a direction so it crosses a human's path. Even when you're making a movie, it's things like, okay, the camera is filming, it looks like it's straight ahead, but the muzzle is actually slightly off to the left. You're always cognizant of that laser coming out of the muzzle, and you never point it at, it's empty. You just never point it at a human. It's like these habits you build into yourself so you never point it at a human being. Even on a set, unless it's some kind of, they have some, like you could have a lithium powered gun that just cycles the action for you. You could have a gas powered gun that cycles the action. All right, something like that. If it's obviously a mechanical device that looks like a firearm but is not a firearm, like there's literally no, But this is not those cases. These are real working firearms. In fact, they were using them for target practice, which is great. I mean, use the authentic thing for the set, but like, you be careful about it. It's not like, oh, we're going to use a muscle car for the set, and it's some 800 horsepower car that goes 240 miles an hour. Okay, well, I'll just hop it in and step on the gas. Like, no, you need to be very, very careful with it. Okay, and this is going to sound crazy, but imagine this scenario. You're handed this device, and say the scenario is like, the hammer is back, and he didn't know quite what to do with the hammer being back. He didn't know how to safely release it. But again, you always remember muzzle safe. Okay, so what if this scenario happened? You warn everyone, cover their ears, you point it in a safe direction, and you fire it 6 times. That sounds a bit shocking, but it literally would have saved a life. And if the gun went bang, then you know that you have a problem in the chain of custody, and you have a very serious problem with the safety on the set. It should have been standard to check the cylinder. Well, muzzle safe, always muzzle safe. Rotate the cylinder, you check all 6 for brass, use the ejection rod, or you can pop the whole cylinder out and you can check the 6 holes. That takes a little bit of effort, but it also saves a life. Or if I had the money, I'd have the gun manufacturer build a clone of whatever, 45 caliber single action he was using that was period authentic, have him build it so it breaks to the side. It makes it faster to check to make sure it's empty. And it wouldn't be period authentic. I guess you could probably just find a gun that looks similar to the cowboy gun styles. And it's not period authentic, but it's worth it for the safety advantages. And we're talking about low budget movies. Nobody cares anyway. Very few people expect a low budget movie to be perfectly period authentic. And then you're just talking about stuff like, oh, is the stitching, are the buttons, is the leather engraving in the boots, is everything period authentic? Really, every little aspect. I mean, you have things like, there's movies where they're fantasy movies or something that's like a horse-drawn, it's horses and horse-drawn carriages, like that's the only culture. But you look at the roads, and if the roads are mounded up in the center and they have grass growing in them, they're showing, this is some YouTube video, they're showing how that's not period authentic. That only happens in cars, because you're forgetting cars don't have horses pulling them. So roads that have horses drawing a carriage, the horses are walking in the middle of the road, so they're pushing that mound down. So when you see that mounded, that's it's like, I think that was in Lord of the Rings. That was a little error they made in some of the roads. It's like, okay, I guess you have to CGI that or have a tractor go through and fix the roads. But I mean, very few people notice that kind of stuff. And for something like a gun, it's actors are not gun people. And a lot of them have this oppositional defiance disorder things where you tell them not to do something, the first thing they do is they do it. And it's like, it's one thing to see a child do that, but like we all know adults who are like that. Anyway, so you're handed this thing. You eject the cylinder, you pop out whatever is inside. While the cylinder is open, you check the barrel for obstructions, and now you examine whatever you ejected from the cylinder. Is it live ammo? That means it has a primary nipple that has, I don't know, mercury perchloride or whatever the hell that, it's a shockable chemical that when subjected to an impact sets off the gunpowder, which is itself not shockable. So you've got the primary nipple, and it's not depressed. And then you have the primary itself, like mercury fulminate or something. And then you have the gunpowder itself, or maybe black powder if these are like, I don't know, cowboy guns. The casing, and then you have the bullet in the casing. But there are real live rounds. There are real fireable blanks that have some powder and primer, not a full charge, but definitely, like if a full charge propels a 250 grain 45 cowboy bullet to like 1,000 feet per second, then it's like a blank charge might propel it to like 500 feet per second, which is still lethal at close range. So it's, it doesn't matter. Or you have dummy rounds, which is a bullet in a casing, but there's no powder in the casing, and there's definitely no primer in the primer nipple, and the nipple may or may not be marked. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but I'm not a gun expert. Now, you don't expect an actor to know all this stuff, but it is fair to teach them how to eject the cylinder, eject the brass, check the barrel for any obstructions, and then, like I said, like if worse comes to worse, you're handed something you don't know what to do with it. It might be loaded, may not be loaded. You could point it in a safe direction. You could fire it 6 times, and you warn people. Like, it teaches everyone a very important lesson, and it's done safely. And the only thing there's no harm except you put a bullet in the ground or something like that. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.